Now, let's go on and talk about the second method for proposing amendments. Okay, this is the second way to propose amendments. Article 5 says this, on the application of the legislatures of 2/3 of the several states. Okay? Now, this clearly states that the states themselves apply. That's their job. They're supposed to apply. And once that condition is met, once the condition is met that 2/3 of the states apply for a convention, then what? Well, then it very clearly says the Congress shall call a convention. Not Congress may, or if they want to, they could. No, Congress shall. So the states do force them to call a convention. One of the things that I think is an error of what Mark Levin is proposing in Convention of the States is proposing, they're saying this is a convention of states. The states are in charge. The states are calling the convention. They're not calling the convention. They apply for the convention, and then the Congress calls the convention. So if Congress calls the convention, who's the one making the rules about the convention? Congress. Okay, they're the ones who are deciding how many delegates are sent. They're deciding how many voting delegates per state. They're the ones deciding all the rules and technicalities of the convention because Congress is in charge. So at a very basic level, to say the states are in charge, don't worry, that to me is contradicting what Article 5 itself says. It says the Congress shall call the convention. The state's only role is to apply for the convention. Okay? Now, let's move on here to what it says in application to this. They shall call a convention, and then it says for proposing amendments. So what's the purpose of the convention? To propose amendments, right? And does Article 5 say no, only one amendment, or does it say a plurality of amendments? A plurality, doesn't it? And does it say there's a limit to how many amendments? No, there's not a limit. You can have as many amendments as you want, and they'll be proposed where? At the convention. Okay? A lot of those things, some advocates of the convention say, oh, don't worry. And you'll notice that they're very careful to say this isn't a constitutional convention. They stay away from that because they know that has some challenges. We don't want to just open up the Constitution to doing whatever. Who wants to do that? And they say, well, we don't want to do that. Well, the issue is, though, when you do call a convention, according to the strict words, the plain interpretation of Article 5, you do propose amendments, and there's no limit to how many, and you propose them there at the convention. Okay? And so it's an open ballgame. It is an opportunity for a runaway convention. Okay? It's that perfect formula. What is a runaway convention? A runaway convention is a convention that exceeds its original mandate for meeting in the first place. Okay? Remember we said at the beginning, all 27 amendments have been passed simply by 2/3 of both houses wanting those amendments to be proposed. Never have we had a constitutional convention, except for the first one, right? Back in 1787. And the first constitutional convention back in 1787 was, by definition, a runaway convention. Right? Historically, what happened? A lot of the states sent delegates to the convention with strict orders. They said, look, your order is, your limit of authority is to revise the Articles of Confederation. Okay? If you remember historically what happened, Madison, the Virginia plan, one of the very first things Madison did, or at least the delegates from Virginia stood up and said was, let's be honest with each other. The Articles of Confederation aren't working. We need to essentially set them aside and start over with this new plan called the Constitution. Okay? So they exceeded their original mandate. They exceeded their original authority. Now, is that a problem? Does that mean our Constitution is illegal? No. Because what happened is the states who sent them, they were the ones who got to choose whether to ratify that decision or not. Now, if the delegates, the Constitutional Convention, as they said, we're going to sign the September 17th, 1787, when they signed the Constitution, the delegates, did that make it the law of the land? No. They just simply said, we ascribe our names and hereby attest that this is what we think is the best plan for America. But then they knew and understood that their power came from the states and the people, so they sent it back to get ratified, didn't they? And the people in the states said, you know what, you're right. This is the best thing for us to do. We do hereby grant the authority to do what we previously hadn't given the authority to do. We didn't give you the authority to set aside the Articles of Confederation, but we see that it's wise and we'll go ahead and grant that authority. So the original grantors of the authority approved what happened, and then that's how our Constitution was legitimized in that way. Now, a point to be made as well is that our founding fathers are God-fearing. They're principle-centered. They put the interests of the country ahead of their own self-interests. That was a beautiful part of what they did when they were part of this runaway convention, because they realized that they needed to have a little bit stronger central government. They needed to have a government that would work to their safety and happiness. Okay? Now, not only did the founders exceed their original mandate to revise the Articles of Confederation, they also exceeded the rules of ratification. The original rules in the Articles of Confederation were 13 out of 13 states had to ratify any changes. What happened as a result of the Articles or of the Constitutional Convention? They changed it. They said that now the ratification rules are 9 out of the 13 states. They actually lowered the bar. So to make changes, they only need 9 out of the 13 states, okay? So they not only exceeded what their stated purpose was, but they also changed the ratification process. So once again, remember, we've never done changes to the Constitution through a convention. The only convention we ever had was exceeded its authority in both its stated intent and the ratification process. So to say, oh, we don't have to worry about that now, the convention would never do that in these days, well, the only precedent we have, that's exactly what happened, okay? Now, it's important to understand when that convention is called and those amendments are proposed, they're still just proposed. They still have to be sent out of the states, and there's still those 2 different ways that they're ratified. We'll read through them again. Which in either case shall be valid to all intents and purposes as part of this Constitution when ratified by the legislatures of 3/4 of the several states or by convention in 3/4 thereof, as the one or the other mode of ratification may be proposed by the Congress. Fundamentally, one of the things that's really important to understand is once that convention is called, once 2/3 of the states apply and the convention is called, Congress is in charge. And whatever happens in that convention can happen. There's no limit to the amendments that can happen, okay? Now, 2 safeguards have been proposed to say, look, no matter how many amendments are proposed during that, one of the ideas that this Convention of States, this Mark Levin idea says is, don't worry, it's going to go back to the states. And the states won't approve anything that's bad. They'll destroy the Constitution, okay? I have 2 responses to that, okay? So here's the first thing they say. The first safeguard they say is most state legislatures are Republican and conservative, so we can trust the states to not allow bad amendments to get passed. Well, let's go back to remembering a certain point in Article 5. Congress chooses the method of ratification. So let's just think for 1 second. If the great majority of the states are Republican and conservative, and Congress wants their amendment that's a little more progressive and liberal to pass, guess what? They don't have to go through the state legislatures anymore. Remember that point I made earlier? That's the point I'm trying to make. Remember the 21st Amendment? They said it's not going to work this way, so let's send it through ratification conventions. Let's not send it to the state legislature. Let's make the states call a convention. Hopefully we can pack them with similarly minded progressives and liberals, etc. Okay? A very legitimate argument is that the state legislatures are in charge of the rules of the convention, so they're still going to be able to control the outcome of the ratifying conventions, even if Congress exercises their power to circumvent them and not use the state legislatures to ratify the amendment. But that may be true theoretically, but historically, look what happened to the 21st Amendment as an example. The Utah State Legislature, which was against the 21st Amendment, they're the ones who wrote the rules for the ratifying convention of the state of Utah, right? And what happened in the ratifying convention? They approved it. They ratified what the state legislature, who was in charge of that convention, wouldn't have ratified. And so historically, proof-wise, that's not a very legitimate safeguard to say, oh, well, the state legislatures are in charge of the convention, so they'll control it. That's not what happened in the 21st Amendment. So that's the first safeguard. The second safeguard, they say, is that only 13 states have to not ratify. Right? If you need 3/4 of states, that means only 13 states need to say we don't want to do this. And they actually said virtually guaranteeing that no bad amendments will make it through the process. 2 points to that, 2 responses. First of all, once again, remember the ratification process can be changed. And maybe we only need 13 states now, but what if they said, look, we need, this whole purpose of calling this convention is to give more power to the states. Let's make it so only 26 states have to ratify. Let's just make it a simple majority. Could that happen? Yes, that could happen. And then you would need half the states to say, no, we don't want to do this. So is there potential for that to occur? Yes, and it's not just theoretical. It actually happened in the past, right? They changed their ratification process in the original convention. They could do it again. And the second response to that is, has anyone ever heard of the 16th or 17th Amendments? Those are freedom-destroying amendments, okay? They're brought to pass with the same assurance that all we need is 13 states to not ratify this, right? The same assurance that we just need so few people not to want to ratify it. We'll make sure that no bad amendments get through. 16th and 17th Amendments are bad amendments, and they got through, okay? Now,